Apple just got hit with a $2 billion fine in Europe, but that's pocket change compared to what's coming next. Because for the first time in Apple's history, governments around the world are doing something that seemed impossible just 5 years ago. They're forcing Apple to change. The Department of Justice is suing them. The EU is dismantling their App Store monopoly. And even loyal customers are finally asking, when did Apple become the villain? Here's the twist Apple never saw coming. It's not Samsung or Google bringing them down. It's their own greed finally catching up with them. By the end of this video, you'll see why Apple's golden era might be ending, not because of competition, but because of Apple itself. But before we dive into Apple's current problems, we need to understand how they got here. And it all starts with one question. What happened to the company Steve Jobs built? Steve Jobs ran Apple from 1997 to 2011. His philosophy was simple: build revolutionary products, and profits will follow. The iMac, iPod, iPhone, each one redefined entire industries.
These are not three separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
Jobs famously ignored Wall Street analysts and stock prices, once saying, "We don't ship junk." Then in 2011, Tim Cook took over, and everything changed. Cook wasn't a visionary product guy like Jobs. He was a supply chain expert, a financial engineer, and he transformed Apple from an innovation company into what it is today, a money extraction machine. Here's the proof. In 2024, Apple spent $110 billion buying back their own stock. Their R&D budget? Just $30 billion. Think about that. Apple spent nearly 4 times more manipulating their stock price than creating new products. Meanwhile, Amazon spent $85 billion on R&D. Google spent $45 billion. Meta spent $40 billion. All of them are outspending Apple on innovation, while Apple prioritizes shareholder returns. Warren Buffett noticed. In 2016, he invested $1 billion in Apple, not because he loved their products, but because he loved their capital allocation strategy. Translation? Buffett bought Apple stock because Cook turned them into a financial services company that happens to make phones. This shift from great products first to shareholders first is the root of every problem we're about to discuss. For over a decade, Apple operated the world's most profitable toll booth, the App Store. Every developer, from indie creators to billion-dollar companies, had to pay Apple up to 30% of their revenue. That Apple tax generated over $20 billion in 2023 alone, pure profit from other people's work. But then, Epic Games said no more. When Epic refused to pay that 30% cut, Apple didn't just remove Fortnite. They banned Epic's developer account entirely and threatened to kill Unreal Engine for millions of other developers. That nuclear response backfired spectacularly. Court documents revealed internal Apple emails calling the App Store a gold mine and discussing strategies to extract maximum revenue from developers who had no choice but to pay. One email literally said, "We have a 100% market share of iOS app distribution." The mask was off. Apple wasn't just charging for convenience, they were exploiting a monopoly. Now, Europe has struck back. The Digital Markets Act labels Apple a gatekeeper and legally forces them to allow sideloading and third-party app stores. Translation? Apple's toll booth just got its first bypass road. For Apple, this isn't just regulatory annoyance. It's an existential threat to one of their most profitable divisions. When developers can skip Apple's 30% cut, that $20 billion revenue stream starts looking very vulnerable. Now let's talk about Apple's real moneymaker, hardware. Specifically, how Tim Cook's Apple turned expensive phones into unrepairable cash traps. Here's where Cook's financial engineering really shows. iPhone prices have exploded from $650 in 2016 to $1,200 in 2023. That's an 85% price increase in 7 years. But did the phones get 85% better? Look at the iPhone 14 versus the iPhone 15, or the iPhone 12 versus 13. The differences are microscopic. Slightly better cameras, marginally faster processors. Yet Cook keeps raising prices because Wall Street demands higher profit margins. It's not just iPhones. The iPad has been virtually unchanged since 2019. The Apple Watch still looks identical to the 2018 version. AirPods, same design since 2016. Cook's Apple doesn't innovate. It iterates just enough to justify premium pricing. Then there's what happens when your expensive iPhone breaks. A cracked screen? That'll be $329. Water damage? Apple might declare it beyond economical repair, even if you have AppleCare Plus. Reddit is filled with horror stories. Customers paying $600 to fix minor damage, or being told their 2-year-old phone isn't worth repairing. Remember Batterygate? Apple admitted to secretly slowing down older iPhones, claiming it protected aging batteries. But the timing was suspicious. Slowdowns coincidentally happened right before new iPhone launches. Apple paid $500 million to settle the lawsuits, but the message was clear. Planned obsolescence isn't a conspiracy theory, it's Apple's business model. Here's the most damning evidence of Apple's decline. They've almost completely stopped creating new product categories. Steve Jobs' Apple gave us the iPod, iPhone, and iPad, each one creating entirely new markets. Tim Cook's Apple? In 13 years, he's launched exactly one new product category, the Apple Vision Pro in 2024. And even that was a disaster. Apple expected to sell 1 million units. They sold 500,000. Why? Because at $3,500, it's another example of Cook's strategy. Charge premium prices for half-baked products and hope the Apple logo justifies the cost. But the real story is what Apple isn't innovating: artificial intelligence. Apple pioneered voice assistants with Siri in 2011. But while Google, Amazon, and OpenAI revolutionized AI, Apple let Siri stagnate. Today, Siri can barely set a timer reliably, while ChatGPT is writing code and creating art. Apple's response? Apple Intelligence, announced in 2024 with great fanfare. Except it barely works. Key features are delayed until 2026 or later. Internal reports suggest Apple was so behind they had to fake demo videos. Some features that were promised still don't exist. This is what happens when a company prioritizes stock buybacks over R&D. While competitors invested billions in AI research, Apple spent $110 billion propping up their stock price. Now they're years behind in the most important technology shift since the internet. This backlash isn't just American or European. It's everywhere. In Europe, lawmakers killed Apple's beloved Lightning cable. After years of Apple making billions from proprietary accessories, the EU said enough and mandated USB-C for everyone. Apple fought it for years, then quietly admitted USB-C was better for customers once they were forced to adopt it. In the United States, the Department of Justice has filed the biggest antitrust case against Apple in decades. They're not just going after App Store fees. They're targeting Apple's entire ecosystem lock-in strategy. The lawsuit claims Apple deliberately makes it hard to leave their ecosystem, from green text bubbles that shame Android users to blocking cross-platform apps. Meanwhile, India, the UK, and Japan have all opened investigations into Apple's anti-competitive practices. For the first time, Apple is fighting regulatory battles on multiple continents simultaneously. But here's what's really telling. Even Apple's most loyal customers are getting fed up. Social media is flooded with posts about subscription charges that won't cancel, refunds that take weeks, and payment systems that mysteriously fail when you try to use gift cards. When you control every aspect of the customer experience, every friction point feels intentional. Apple built their empire on customer loyalty, but loyalty has limits, and Tim Cook's Apple is testing them. Apple has weathered criticism before. They survived Antenna-gate, the headphone jack removal, and even Battery-gate. So why is this different? Scale. Apple isn't facing one lawsuit or one angry customer base. They're fighting regulatory battles in the US, Europe, and Asia, while their core customer base grows increasingly frustrated. Leadership. Steve Jobs could sell ice to Eskimos because he genuinely believed Apple was changing the world. Tim Cook is selling incremental upgrades at premium prices because shareholders demand quarterly growth. Competition. For the first time in years, Android phones match or beat iPhones in key areas while costing significantly less. Samsung's Galaxy S24 has better AI features. Google's Pixel has better cameras. The iPhone's premium is harder to justify when the innovation gap has disappeared. Apple used to be years ahead of competitors. Now they're years behind in AI, playing catch-up in foldables, and their last truly new product, Vision Pro, was a commercial failure. Wall Street is starting to notice. Apple's stock price has always assumed they could maintain premium pricing and ecosystem control indefinitely. But when your biggest innovation is removing ports and charging more for the privilege, that assumption starts looking shaky. The very strategies that made Tim Cook's Apple profitable in the short term, financial engineering over product innovation, ecosystem lock-in over customer value, are now being challenged by governments, competitors, and customers simultaneously.
I believe that augmented reality is a profound technology. So today, I'm excited to announce an entirely new AR platform with a revolutionary new product. Introducing Apple Vision Pro.